I'm going to go ahead with the meeting beginning ritual.
起立，面向佛堂，参加三鞠躬、一鞠躬、再鞠躬、三鞠躬，参加各位点传世一鞠躬，开班一鞠躬，请坐下。Please be seated.
There's a couple of topics that I want to wrap up from 2017. One of the questions that was asked that I found to be extremely interesting was about intelligence. Is the Tao intelligent? So the answer that I provided last time was that, well, there's definitely some kind of intelligence behind everything, but it doesn't seem like human intelligence. So I want to return to that and provide a little more details as to how that conclusion was reached. Let's go to that particular slide. So this is a quick Q&A section about questions, answers, discussions, and speculations about the Tao. Whenever we encounter anything that's my own personal speculation, I will definitely tag it as such. Whenever there's something that comes from the Dao De Jing or the teachings of the ancient Tao sages, I will also identify them as such. So the question that was asked in the middle of 2017 is the Tao intelligent? So some of this can veer into territories that normally would be within the realm of debates between creationists and scientists. So creationists usually will go to the position of the intelligent designer, quote unquote. And that is done by using examples from nature about the marvelous feats of engineering that are found at the cellular level, at the molecular level sometimes, and then remarking on how that cannot possibly come as a result of random chance, of random collisions between different molecules coming together. That would be sort of like in a junkyard, the parts just, happen to fall together to construct an airplane on the spot, which of course people would think, well, that's unlikely. In fact, that's impossible. So it seems like we have to accept the intelligent designer, right? So real scientists with a full understanding or perhaps a more complete understanding of science will counteract what the creationists are pointing out by sketching out an outline of how complexity can come into being. So that debate rages on. I am definitely on the side of the scientists, and I want to add a little bit more to the discussion. As I mentioned previously, there are some thoughts that I personally believe in that would be in agreement with atheism. At the same time, I know that there are things that I believe in that would not be accepted at all by atheists. So this is a way to describe how that is. So let me do a quick check of our microphones. All righty, here we go. Okay, so let me explain what I mean. So there is a longer answer that I think that you guys will find fascinating. That longer answer is about the difference between patterns and codes. And I realize that many people probably haven't encountered this particular concept before. If you have, please feel free to type in whatever your thoughts may be in the question section of the GoToWebinar software. So patterns and codes, what are they? How are they different? And how do they bear upon this discussion? Okay, so let me explain. Let's start with patterns. What are patterns? What are patterns in nature? So when Tao sages, Tao cultivators, and in fact everyone else, when we observe nature, we find patterns everywhere. So, what a marvelous miracle it is to have the cosmos working with this unseen choreography where everything just kind of comes together beautifully. What about the cycles? So many different cycles we see, and so many of them seem to be circular, cyclical in nature. The changing of seasons, night going into day, back to night again, back to day again, and so on. So a lot of these patterns, frankly, are beautiful. So what about them? Where do they come from? Were they made? Were they designed? Well, here's the bottom line. Here's one example of a beautiful pattern found in nature, and that's a snowflake. So every snowflake is different. Everyone is exhibiting this stunning symmetrical pattern that is quite beautiful, and no two are alike. No two are the same. So one thing that you can probably tell right away is that in a snowstorm, there are a gazillion of these snowflakes that are falling from the sky to the ground. So if each one has to be designed, that's got to be a pretty time-consuming job. That's got to be a pretty heavy-duty task. So when it comes to patterns, one thing that we know for sure is that patterns require no intelligence to create. They simply occur when conditions are right. In the case of a snowflake, when the temperature is right and water freezes, it forms crystalline patterns. So yet another way to see it, just imagine if you have a soft and pliant surface, think of like the sofa or the bed or something like that, and you've got just a scattering of marbles, let's just say, on that surface. Well, initially, they're just scattered randomly. They're not forming any patterns at all. But if you put something heavy on it, on the mattress of the bed or perhaps a sofa, think of like maybe a heavy object, perhaps a bowling ball or something like that. Just throw that on the bed, on the mattress, anywhere, and then suddenly all the marbles are coming together and they form a circular pattern around that particular heavy object. Doesn't have to be a bowling ball, it could be something else. So that circular pattern is spontaneous. It occurs when the conditions are right. It requires no intelligence. So remember, patterns require no intelligence. They occur spontaneously. So what are some other examples? Well, nature's patterns replicate themselves at different scales. So previously we talked about the fractal nature of existence, of the universe. And we can see that this is all part of the Tao. This is the great Tao and the personal Tao, Tao at the macroscopic level and Tao at the personal level. So look at the macroscopic level. This is the pattern exhibited by a galaxy, a spiral pattern galaxy. And it's beautiful. We see this particular pattern replicated at a far smaller scale. Now remember, a galaxy has billions of systems with a star in the center, with planets in orbit, of which our own solar system is but one of many, one of billions. So on one of these planets, let's just say planet Earth, we occasionally have manifestations of the same pattern. This is a view of a storm forming, off the coast, view from a satellite. So look at the similarity in the spiral pattern between the galaxy and this storm. Of course, at a far smaller scale, much, much more tiny than the macroscopic galactic scale. And yet, they have similarities. So these patterns, again, require no intelligence to create. They occur when conditions are right. Storms occur not because some deities have ordered that the storm manifest. Storms occur when conditions are right. Atmospheric science is clear on exactly what we call storms. The temperature differentials, the amount of moisture content in the atmosphere, they all contribute to it. And when those conditions come together, you get this horrific storm that forms, and it just happens by itself. When people do not understand this, they naturally attribute it, the formation of hurricanes, typhoon, etc., to deities. Now we know it's not necessary. So remember, let's bring it back to the Tao. The Tao of heaven, you can think of this as the cosmic Tao or the universal Tao. The Tao of heaven is reflective of the Tao of the world, the Tao of our world, which in turn is reflective of the Tao of people. So this is a familiar concept from 81, where the Tao of heaven is reflective of the Tao of the sages and vice versa. So that's pattern. So all these different patterns, intricate patterns that we see, those have no requirements of being driven by any kind of intelligence. But let's take a look at codes. So what about codes? How are they different from patterns? And what do I mean by codes? What's a code? Codes are things that convey information and represent meaning. The easiest, the most immediate example that I can probably give you is the alphabet. So what are those? Well, those certainly don't occur in nature. Now, keep in mind that we human beings are part of nature. The intelligence of human beings, the mind of human beings that can invent language, representations, alphabets, etc., that's part of nature too. So you can say that alphabets have a natural origin as well. It's just a little bit more roundabout, but it arises from the natural intelligence that human beings have. So we can put these alphabets together to form new things. So the letters will come together to form words. Words like love and hate, big and small, men, women, etc. So alphabets by themselves seem devoid of meaning, and yet when you put them in a specific sequence and assign them to a particular thing, a particular entity, somehow they take on meaning. Where did that meaning come from? It comes from the combination of these different letters. It seems to have emerged out of nowhere. Words, you can put words together to form a sentence. And then suddenly it's not just, it's not just love and hate, men and women. It's something more. It's something that depicts a process. So you might say, a particular man loves a particular woman. Now you've created something extra. You've created an additional context that did not exist before. Interactions between that particular man and woman, which is one of love. And you know what that means. There's behavior associated with that. There's feelings, emotions associated with that. So in forming a sentence from words, you've created additional meaning. And that meaning seems to have emerged seemingly out of nowhere, because they weren't with the individual words before. But then suddenly, now there is. The sentences can form paragraphs. Paragraphs can form, for instance, chapters of a book. And all the chapters together form books. So this just goes on and on. And when you have paragraphs and chapters and books, you can get additional properties out of the combination. So when you look at a combination like a book, you might say, well, that's just a big, huge collection of different letters put together in a particular way. Yes, but also you can look at that particular book, maybe it's a novel, and you can say, wow, that was a great novel. that was an epic tale, that was a saga, or that was so romantic, or that was so tragic. So suddenly, that collection of letters that didn't have that meaning before, I mean, individual letter is not romantic, it's not tragic, but somehow you put it together, it's got additional emergent properties. Again, seemingly out of nowhere. So all of this require intelligence to put together. So in philosophy, people talk about the infinite number of monkeys in front of an infinite number of typewriters, and they're just, they're just hitting those typewriters randomly. In infinite time, one of them will produce Hamlet, the play, the Shakespearean play. Indeed, because we're talking about infinity, not only will they produce Hamlet, they will produce all the possible variations of Hamlet, indeed an infinite number of Hamlet, the play. Now, the history of the universe is not infinite. It's a pretty long time. We're talking billions of years, but it's not an infinite span of time. So in order for meaning to emerge in the universe, it has to be driven by something very specific. It has to be driven by intelligence. So where did that come from? And, was there intelligence associated with that? Well, back to codes again. Let's keep going just a little bit, and you will see exactly what I mean. So first, I'm pushing this another step to talk about when a lot of books are put together, you form a shelf of books, many shelves of books, a library, a study. So all of this is done through intelligent effort. Those books don't just come together in a shelf like this. They do not occur spontaneously when the conditions are right. Somebody went through the effort to put books together and say that, well, these are my favorite books. I'm going to put them on my shelf here for easy access. So that requires intelligence too. So now let me ask about human beings, about you, about me, about everyone else. So in human beings, are we patterns or are we codes? Well, actually, we find both. We've got patterns or we've got codes. Where do human beings come from? What is the makeup of a human being? What is the meaning of life? These are some of the most enduring questions for all of humanity throughout history. Where do we come from? What's it all about? Where are we going? How is it ever going to end? How will it end? What is the meaning? What is the purpose? So let's talk about patterns in human beings. Well, the patterns in us, here's what we have learned from biology. The patterns in us reflect much larger patterns in nature. And there are many patterns that we can talk about, but I'll just use one. So what is that pattern? Well, I think you probably recognize it. That is the pattern of a fingerprint. Well, haven't we just seen something similar to this pattern? Yes, we have. We saw the spiral pattern galaxy. We saw the spiral pattern of a storm forming off the coast. So reflect, reflect, reflect. Different scales. A finger is far smaller than the hurricane that you see here. The hurricane is far smaller than the galaxy that you see here. And yet, the same pattern is reflective of one another. So many other patterns in human beings that reflect a larger reality. This is another way to say that the Tao of the heaven is reflected in the Tao of humanity. So from biology, we have also learned that every cell in every person, you, me, everyone else, is built from a biological blueprint that contains a lot of instructions, a lot of codes. So does everyone know the codes I'm talking about? Yeah, it's the human genetic building blocks. It's the DNA, the building instructions. So we're all built from codes, and codes have to be put together by intelligence. Well, interesting. So now, what we can say is that you're a human being. Therefore, you are the result of intelligence, some kind of intelligence. Not necessarily the intelligent designer that the creationists would like to advance and advocate. As I remarked before, that intelligence, whatever it is, we call it the Tao, it's not human intelligence because a human mind looking at the design of the human body, of the human genetic blueprint, will find a lot of things wrong with the human design, with biological design. So what scientists themselves like to talk about is the metaphor of the found watch. So creationists like to say that if you wander out in nature and you find a rock, for all you know, that rock could have always been there. It could be just natural, occurring naturally. But if you find a watch, then even if you've never seen a watch before, you have no idea what it does. Just by looking at the watch, maybe it's like one of those big, large, pocket watch. When you see that and you see the intricate craftsmanship that goes into it, you know that it's been put together for a particular purpose. And it's been put together by thinking entities. So the idea is that while human beings being so intricate, there must be a watchmaker. And scientists point out that the watchmaker is in fact evolution. It's driven by some kind of intelligence, but it's a watchmaker that is blind. The blind watchmaker is the metaphor that is oftentimes used. When you dig into that type of material, you will come across that reference quite a bit. So the blind watchmaker, knows what he or she or it wants to accomplish, but can't see very well what the results are, and therefore the blind watchmaker forces on and occasionally will see if a watch is working properly, by various means, but can't really see what they're doing very easily. But the bottom line still is that we cannot dismiss the role of intelligence in the makeup of a human being. It's a non-human intelligence, and I don't know what it is. I call it the Tao.
Let's go ahead and do the meeting ending ritual, everybody. 起立，面向佛堂，持架深鞠躬，一鞠躬，再鞠躬，三鞠躬，持架各位顶传十一鞠躬，斜翻一鞠躬。Well done, everybody. Thank you so much.